I hope that was useful. I bet it wasn't just useful, I bet it was really hard. Because actually, just trying to get your headline things around this and have that flow is really, really difficult. And I had a few conversations with people where they were struggling with, I think some people struggle because they've already got in their minds how they describe their business, and they describe their business in a particular way. And actually, you almost need to just put that to one side and start again and just try and go through headlines of each of these. And then you can read back your one and you start thinking, oh, actually, this one was clearer. And this is basically what you'll get far fewer questions from investors if you follow this model. Because if you miss any of these out, if you miss out, I've literally seen people missing out the problem, and I've literally seen people missing out solution, and I've seen people miss out team. Oh yeah, question one, how does it make money? And they forgot to mention that in the pitch. So you've seen people like miss all of this out. So now that you've got that in your minds, we're now going to do the fun bit, is how to pitch. So I'm going to go through an opening, I'm going to go through the kind of style you should come across, the slides, how you handle questions, and some tips. So, don't forget, and I nearly forgot when I came up on stage, to introduce yourself and say what your company is. Sometimes someone will do that for you, but I always think it's worth always saying it so you just get in a habit, because otherwise people are like, oh, come on, which company is it? And particularly if they've got some information about you beforehand and they're not even sure which one they're looking at. Make sure you introduce yourself. A bold opening statement is really, really good. And particularly if you say, so there's a really good picture I saw the other day from one of the Northern Stars winners. Their opening statement is, employing the wrong person costs a medium-sized business £134,000. And you think, God, that sounds like a lot of money. But they're immediately saying, if you hire the wrong person, it's a big problem. And when you see that kind of size of problem, you go like, what, per person sounds huge. And immediately everyone just sits up and goes, okay, they're onto something. And then they start talking about the problem in a little bit more detail. Then they start going into the solution they've got for that problem and how it's going to make money and so on. But that opening, simple statement is really, really good. I know a very, very good entrepreneur who is now looking to raise something like 25 million or something. She's brilliant. Her opening statement when she was on an accelerator and on the pitch night, she stood at a lectern like that and she said, you're about to watch the best pitch you've ever seen. Now, luckily her pitch was good, but wow, that's a risky one, because if it's not very good, they're going to remember you. But actually, she said that, and the room just went an extra bit quieter, and everyone sat up and listened. But just having that bold statement, one statement to kick things off, and actually talking about the problem is really good. Short, punchy, and a bit of data is really good. So that £134,000, I remember it, and everyone remembers at the end of the pitch, and everyone knows exactly why they're doing it. Style, that's not me. But actually, what I really like, and some people, I've actually seen some pitch training where they say don't do this, but I really, really think it's important. When you're talking about the problem, I think particularly when you're pitching to angels, or even to VCs, if you can tell a bit of a story about why it's a problem. So, and people will often say, I don't really have a story. And I would say, okay, so how do you know that there's this problem to solve? Well, I was out shopping and then it's like, well, you have a story. And actually, often people come up with ideas when they're working in an industry and they experience a problem themselves, or they experience it as a consumer, or they can see that a big business is not going to do that and they were kind of frustrated. So most people have a story, and that's a really good way to get a personal connection with the people you're talking to. They also want your buy-in. You're not buying running a franchise, McDonald's or something. They want you to be 100% dedicated to it. So if you have a personal story like, well, this is why, this is how I got involved, and this is why I realized it was a problem, immediately they're going, they're not just going to walk away from this. They've got some real in-depth kind of buy-in for this company. Be confident. And some people are really nervous speaking publicly and standing up and trying to explain the business, particularly if it's complex business and they don't think they'll be able to get it across. You're just going to have to pretend, because actually everyone's watching you. If you're confident, Or if you're really nervous and you're not sure, they're going to think they don't really know their business. Perhaps they're nervous because they think this is not a very good investment opportunity. Can they pitch to someone that's going to buy their product? And they start having doubts about your kind of lack of confidence. Pause between points, which is something I need to do more. I just don't use a script. I know sometimes you're kind of nervous and you want to make sure you get all your points across. It's far better to be more natural and just learn it. You need to really, really know your pitch. When you're explaining it to someone down the pub or whether you're explaining it to an investor, you really need to know it. And the more you practice it, the more natural it will seem, and you just be able to talk without any notes or anything. I think if you get up and you start going through, kind of shuffling through some kind of cue cards and so on, it doesn't look like you're as prepared, or you should be so in your business that the investors are expecting you to just know absolutely everything and be able to reel it off really easily. The investors is really, really key. You're not, when you stand up to present, you're not a vessel for your pitch. So you're not there to basically read out to cover off all those points I said. Actually, you're there as a representative of your company. And so as you're stood there, they're making all sorts of judgments about you. Some which are, really harsh and probably outrageous because they've only seen you for 10 seconds, but they are making all those assumptions. Are you a good leader? They'll try and work that out from the way you speak. Teamwork. Is the rest of your team there? How do you interact between each other? I've seen a pitch where there is the tech guy that built the product and was going to do a live demo, and then the other kind of salesy founder who was there stomping up and down, a bit like I was just doing, kind of going, yeah, we're going to do this, and now we're going to do a live demo. And he was like, oh, it's not working. First of all, don't do a live demo, I'll tell you that later. But the relationship between those two people became really apparent within about 5 seconds. So he was just going, make it work, make it work, make it work. And the other guy was like, oh, I'm sorry. And all of us just thought, that poor guy is expected to do a live demo, and for whatever reason, it hasn't worked. And that doesn't mean he's a terrible dev. It doesn't mean he doesn't know what he's doing. It just sometimes happens. And the way the other person reacted, and you could just see that friction within the team, and none of us wanted to invest immediately. They might have been absolutely amazing, just like that team dynamic is never going to work. They want to see, if you do come across problems, how you solve them. The sales thing is really, really key, because you're trying to sell to an investor, and when you're pitching to an investor, it is different to how you would pitch to try and sell your product. But actually, they want to know if you can stand up and sell it. And investors will often talk about someone that's presenting and pitching, and they'll be like, yeah, I thought the product was good, and I thought he was good, and actually I know someone in Waitrose supermarket that they could pitch to, and I'd be happy to put them forward to go and have a chat with them. And that confidence of being able to say, oh, I'm happy to present that person to my network because I've seen him do a pitch and I've seen his ability to actually convey the information and so on. So actually, they're already thinking ahead to who they might be able to introduce you to, and what they'd be far less likely to invest if they thought, oh, they were good, but I wouldn't want to introduce them to anyone in my network. They wouldn't be thinking of that, but I'll still invest at the same time. It does really affect that. Organizational skills, do you turn up on time? Do you have your slides in the wrong order, et cetera, et cetera? So, don't make the same mistakes I have of having kind of inconsistent slides that are really terrible and too much text and so on. They should be your slides and your design. So they should have your company logo on. They should the slides, the design of it should kind of reflect that logo, reflect at least a kind of consistency all the way through those 10 slides, 20 slides, however many you're going to have. They really need to look really good. 1 point per slide. Again, this poor person had 27 slides. Even though they had 27 slides, there were multiple points on each slide. So some of it literally looked like this. And I'll just come to this point. I'll skip that one. And it was just too much information. You're just making one simple point. And like I said, if you've got 12 slides in your 3-minute deck, and you're essentially covering 6 areas, you can make 2 points, for example, about your business model. We make our money like this, next slide, and this is where we see the projections based on X, Y, and Z. So it's really kind of simple as you go through. yeah, use pictures and kind of short bursts of text. Don't do something like this. And just don't give yourself too many slides to get through. Questions. So this can make or break a pitch. So I don't know if any of you went to our Northern Stars pitching competition, and the final has some really, really great pictures, and some of them are really confident. And some of them, I'd seen them much better in practice than actually when they got to the final. And they're a bit more juddery, and they forgot a couple of bits. And then they got to the questions, and you could see they were like, shit, I messed that up. Okay, have you got any questions? And there were some quite difficult questions for them. They managed to rescue and turn that around and end up being a winner because they were able to answer those questions really well. And I suspect that the reason they were able to answer those questions really well is because they tried to guess what those questions would be. Try to guess what those questions would be and what the answer would be. And sometimes you see people, they say, like, I always get the same questions. They always ask me this. And it's like, what's your answer to that? Well, it's like, just have a brilliant answer. And in fact, I've seen some founders, when they're pitching, writing down the questions. And sometimes they write it down there and then as being asked, so they can kind of make sure they've answered them properly. And sometimes write them down afterwards. And I ask the person, why are you writing all the questions down? Well, to change my deck. And you should do that. If you keep getting asked the same question, it's because something is missing in your deck. So reflect on that question and go, okay, what do I need to explain in my deck that will avoid that question being asked? But really try to anticipate them and practice your pitch out on people and say, if you were going to ask a question on this, what would it be? And just try to work out a really clear answer. And remember, when you're answering a question, in an investment committee or over coffee with an angel, you're not going to have a long time to answer. A, because time's restricted, but also because their attention span is pretty short. They want to know, if they're asking you a question, they kind of want to know the answer within 10 seconds. If you start giving a really long 2-minute answer, you've lost them. So try and make it really, really clear about when you do your answers. So, I love Viz, hence the top tips. No videos. This is a personal one. Other people like videos, and I think that there is a time when a video is valid. And a video is valid when a lot of the value of your company is about the brand and the branding and the design of what it is you're producing. So you might want to do a very short video. Again, if this is a 3-5-minute pitch, you only want a 20-second video. And it basically just takes you through how beautiful your software or your product looks. So it's showing off the design. You shouldn't be doing any more than that. I had 2 founders pitch to me, and they came on stage. Hi, I'm Dave. Hi, I'm Sarah. We're now going to pitch our business called X. I think, great. First of all, we're going to do a video. And they press play on this video, and the video is essentially them doing a pitch. It was them doing a pitch, and it was very slick and professionally done. They'd obviously spent money on it, and they'd obviously, this was the 100th time they'd had to do it that day in front of the camera. So it was really good, and they were there watching it. And in the video, they actually had on the company T-shirts, the branded T-shirts. And obviously, they were stood also in the company T-shirts. And they were stood on the same side, so it was really weird to see 2 people dressed just like the 2 people in the videos, with the same weird expressions on their faces. And it lasted about 2 minutes, and as soon as it finished, the person that was running it was obviously a bit annoyed that they'd done this video and was very much like, you've got 1 minute left. And then they were like, well, just, and then they're kind of finishing off with a few other kind of examples and so on. It just didn't come across very well at all. And it just wasn't necessary. There was nothing in that video that they couldn't have just done live. And doing it live is a lot more personable, and you're much more likely to get a really good connection. Don't do a live demo. I have seen some people do brilliant live demos, and it's worked really well, but why risk it? At this point, all you're trying to do is get them interested. So actually, there's so much else you can talk about, and you can talk about your product and how it works, but when you're doing a live demo, you're taking up quite a lot of that time, so you're putting a lot of that focus on how it works rather than how much money it's going to make, how big is the market, and so on. Remember that particularly fund managers would have seen you talk about the size of your market, et cetera, many, many times. Not you, but other companies. Maybe that day you're like the 3rd ed tech company that's pitched. So if you say the ed tech industry is worth £5 billion a year, they'll be like, that's not, I've just seen £500 million, £1 billion, and so on. So make sure that the things you're saying are true when you're coming out with some of that data. The competition is really, really key. It's really good to talk about when you're talking about the market and how big it is, to mention your competition then and how you differentiate and how good that competition is and how well they're doing, because that validates what you're talking about. And remember, the worst thing you could possibly say is, the good news is, guys, there is no competition. We're the only people in this space. Every single time, fund manager's hand will go up and go, I've seen one of these already today, and I saw another one last week, and then you just feel absolutely terrible, just shrinking in front of them. So make sure you've done lots of research into your competition and properly understand why you're different to them and why they are succeeding, and so on. I like it where there's two people pitching, particularly if you're a really small team and there's almost a CTO and CEO, already. Then the CTO, and I've seen that CTOs really, really hate pitching. They're like, why are you making me do this? But it really adds to it, and it makes it feel like they're a team, and they get on, and they can work together. So you have one person doing one bit, hand over to the next person, they'll do their bit, hand back to this person, they'll do their bit, they'll do the final bit, and then everyone says thank you. And that flow just keeps the energy up as well. So you're not listening to one person's droning voice for 3 hours. I've seen teams argue, and more than once, in front of investors about where the business is going. And this particularly comes when they're asking questions. They might agree on the pitch, then a question will be like, well, where do you see the next feature? What next feature are you going to build on top of your software? And someone will say, oh, well, I think this. Oh, really? And then someone else will be like, well, yeah, I mean, but that's what we agreed, but actually, perhaps we should be doing something else. And you can just see that team kind of coming apart, and you can start to see the dynamics of that team and where the kind of tensions are. Really have a really clear vision of where you want to take the business. And if you've got any disagreements, agree not to disagree in front of investors. Have those conversations internally. Just be really clear. I've seen, that could just tear apart any really good pitch. So we took the first lot of Northern Stars winners to Bloomberg in London. They pitched to a whole room full of London investors. And they all did a great job. Is that my time up? They all did a great job, and they were answering the questions really, really well. And someone put their hand up at the end of a great pitch, and the person was expecting some really great questions, and he was really confident. Yes, can I take your question? I've just been on your website. It doesn't work. And you can just see the person going, and you can just see them thinking, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill him. He said he'd have it working by now. And it's really, really important that actually your visible online presence, whether it's a website or Twitter, is up and running and it looks like it's being used. As you're speaking, there will be investors and companies and fund managers on their phone checking. So as you're saying, oh, we're this business, oh, I've not heard of them, and they start Googling you already. And they start Googling you while they listen to you in the background. And if they find, they're on Twitter, but they've got like one follower. Or their website looks really blocky, looks really basic, like they've done it themselves in 5 minutes, or they've got a Wix website, and particularly if you're going to be selling an online product, or your website is your product, it just looks really, really bad. So make sure it's all kind of tip-top. They will be doing that stuff in the background. And that is all for now. We're going to have a quick break, and then we're going to have a panel discussion. Now, the panel discussion, as I said before, we've got a founder who has gone on found investment and raised investment, and we've got the investor, one of the investors of that raise. So it's hopefully going to be useful for you to get an understanding of why a founder would take an investment and why they would choose them, and for the investor to say what they saw in that founder and in that business, and the different kinds of dynamics within that. So if we want to take a quick break, and then we'll go to that panel.